So, ladies and gents, before I begin, can I just ask you two things? Number one, I want you to tell me or think about your favorite childhood food memory. Number one. Number two, your favorite dish that you had on the buffet at lunch today. Right, very important. I'll just explain why a little bit later. Now, my name is James Knight Paccheco. So, the Knight is British, but I was born in Venezuela, so hot and cold. I've been cooking professionally for the past 25 years, all over the world. So from five-star luxury hotels, resorts, Michelin-starred restaurants, standalone, as well as cooking on the BBC. I've got extensive knowledge about food industries, things like that. At the same time, I also host a podcast, which I'll talk about, and I also co-founded something called the Dubai Chefs Collective, which is around 110 of the top-tier executive chefs and culinary directors within Dubai. Now, why should you, as revenue management, listen to a grumpy chef? I'm hearing you. First of all, we're going to talk about lots of different things when it comes to how can you and the chef get involved together to maximize revenue. Now, during my time in different five-star luxury resorts, let's be very honest, the chef and the revenue management teams didn't really see eye to eye. The chefs are the creatives, the artists, the drama makers, if you like. And you guys are the ones with the analytical brain that make all things revenue happen. However, there's always been a clash. Let's be very honest. You don't see eye to eye, whether it's the capex, whether it's a certain grade 12 Kobe beef. There's always going to be an issue. However, what I have found is that once you combine these two powerhouses together, the revenue can actually shoot through the roof. Now, believe it or not, the chefs can be key decision makers, specifically within the F&B. So I'm talking about food and beverage. I'm not talking about your housekeeping or anything like that, but specifically when it comes to all things food and beverage related. Now, we're going to talk about creating exclusive dining experiences a little bit later, but the one thing I also want you to think about is the market trends. What in your mind right now are the current food and beverage market trends that your hotel, restaurant could tap into in order to maximize that revenue? How can you have a chat with the chef in order to combine that and for them to really push and maximize things? Secondly, this is a dangerous game, I call it. Menu engineering as a profit tool. Now, wherever I work and whatever I do, the first thing I do, especially in the company that I'm involved in, is wherever we go, it doesn't matter if it's a cafe or a five-star luxury environment, it's a very basic thing called purchase to sales sheet. Number one, some people love it, some people hate it, chefs hate it. However, if you get them involved with that at the very, very beginning, and I'm talking about, so you know the chefs and the kitchens are like an army. So you have the commis, right? The demi-chef de partie, so on and so forth. I allow the exec chefs to actually bring in the commis at the very entry level in order for them to understand how profit and loss works, what purchases to sales on a daily sheet can do at the end of the month. Right, because that's what we want to do, right? At the end of the month, we want to make sure our food cost is nice and low, right? Purchases are nice and low, so we make as much revenue as possible. However, you all know, again, that chefs being drama makers, they want the very best. So we need to find the level balance. Again, analyzing the food costs is really important. And as I told you before, all of you have this beautiful analytical brain, especially when it comes to the numbers, that chefs don't necessarily recognize. If you bring that together, it can be absolute magic, right? These small margins can make a huge contribution to the overall revenue within your outlets, units, restaurants, cafes, so on and so forth. The other one is the optimization and the placement on the menus. A lot of people say it's not important. Other people say, yes, it is. For me, it's extremely important to have your signature dishes, and we all know, sort of top right of the menu, that's where you're going to have your headliners. On top of that, we'll talk about the food and beverage front of house teams that can also smash the revenue at the same time. The other ones are collaborations. Now, I'm sure being in the gastronomic capital of the Middle East, which is Dubai, you've seen probably hundreds of collaborations with different chefs, different brands, so on and so forth. The latest one I just saw was Hatem Matar, who is a pitmaster, who is an absolute legend. They've partnered up with Porsche to sort of see what they can do within the desert. So it's quite an interesting thing to do. A lot of different people are doing this, but it just depends on your brand and what you want to collaborate to, whether it's food, whether it's brands. A lot of brands in Abu Dhabi at the moment are sort of partnering up with Shopard, for example. And that brings in a lot of revenue, especially with the locals. It's actually quite big. So then, then the other one, this here. Now I'm talking about the curated experiences. One of the really amazing experiences that I'll always remember is on a Monday, our specific venue was always dead. But we wanted to find a way to maximize that revenue. And it was 2.5 hours from here, middle of nowhere, in the desert. So we all thought, okay, what could we do in order to get this thing in? Very, very simply, we just thought about history. We're talking about basically cooking in the ground, a whole lamb shua. And it was a Bedouin experience. It didn't cost us very much money, because there's not too much to set up. Also, the lamb is not super duper expensive, but it was the chef's job. Of course, we dig the hole, put the lamb in there, cook it for a long time, and then 12 hours later, once the guests come in, they're all sat around, and what do we do? What's the showpiece? They're digging up the lamb and showing all of these guests how amazing it is, you know? And it wasn't necessarily about the taste. It was more about the experience. And vavavoom, surprise, surprise, every Monday we got packed. So these are the types of things that you have to think outside the box. Chef-driven special events, I don't need to tell you, there are thousands of them. But again, how you as the revenue teams, how can you lock that in with the chef without having a fight? For me, that's really key. Again, wine and cocktail pairings. Now, alcohol, believe it or not, is a huge revenue driver that I don't need to tell you. However, there are so many in the market, so many different experiences. What's the one thing that's going to make you stand out? It's not just about the chef or the wine pairings anymore. There has to be a story. There has to be a story that's going to enable you to generate large amounts of revenue. Whether it's going to be a one-time thing or you're going to do it once a month, you have to be creative. Now, the other drama makers that I didn't talk about, which may or may not be in the room, are the directors of marketing, right? These guys are pushing hard to get your name up there. So again, you have to work with all three. At times, it can be extremely daunting and challenging, but when you're breaking bread over a table, everything should be fine. Now, the other one, which are really, for me, is absolutely key. Whether you're working in this region or working anywhere else in the world, when you're talking about culinary excellence and awards, please do not dismiss this. We're talking about Michelin, 50 Best, Goen Milo, all of these culinary gastronomic awards, minimum, if you get in the guide, let alone a star, let alone a bib gourmand, the revenue goes up by 30% minimum, right? But don't forget, these awards can also be taken away. So it's up to the operational teams to ensure that the standards are met. But at the same time, you need to start doing a little bit of give and take, because once the revenue goes up, okay, maybe your overheads will start to go up. Maybe the chef wants more premium ingredients. And that's another conversation that you need to have. The emotional connection. Now, I guarantee half of you in the room, when you're in a restaurant, love to have a birthday plate in the restaurant, and the other half hate it when the waiter comes in and starts singing you happy birthday. However, it's an emotional connection. 85 or 90% of the actual decisions when you go to a restaurant is made by the ladies. So, sorry gents, everything is driven by the ladies. Why I'm saying emotional connection, because it could be about a first date, could be about an anniversary. These things are really important. Again, as a team, how do you maximize on that from the reservations right through to them coming in to the very end revenue? What can you do to drive that forward? Front of house and revenue teams. Now, this is for all the revenue directors and everyone in that sphere. When was the last time you sat in one of your restaurants alone, quietly, and just watched what's going on? Because it's during those quiet times of brilliance, you can actually start to think, okay, what can we do? What can we implement in order to push the front of house teams? What can the chef do in order to push that little extra molecule of revenue? It would be really important. You know why? Because you will have a completely different eye to what the chef has, to what the front of house have. And actually your input is invaluable. That's what I'm saying. You're an absolute key, not just when it comes to the numbers, but actually when it comes to that blue sky thinking. Now, on the 31st of October, the restaurant I was involved in, so I'm still involved in, Reba, we actually won a Bib Gourmand, and we got Michelin Opening of the Year. It's a very small little place right at the very, very end of Abu Dhabi. We didn't expect a single thing, to be honest. We just expected to sort of be in the guide, and we had these two monstrous awards. The next day, our revenue quadrupled. We were in shock, to be honest. And it's still pushing. And my team, and I'm still working full-time, are, really slating me, because from lunch right through to dinner, we're getting smashed. But it's because of the hard work of the team. That's what I'm saying. Think about these awards. They're really serious. The first Michelin star was given in 1926. And the Michelin guide has been around since 1900. It's a serious guide for a reason. And they're going to pop up all over the shop. On the 12th of December, Qatar will have their first. And then it's going to go to Saudi. And we all know what's going to happen there. Secondly, one of the reasons that I'm here is because I have this podcast, which is not about boring chefs, right? It's about anything and everything to do with hospitality. The podcast is now on Emirates Airlines. But my job is to celebrate everything that we do within the region when it comes to hospitality. One of the ladies who's speaking here today, actually two. The next one, Peggy, she's been on the show, and she's actually on Emirates Airlines herself. Incredible story. And Judith Cartwright. They both came on the show. After they came on the show, I had so many people reach out to talk about revenue, and absolutely amazing. But the power of collaboration is really important. And that's what I'm saying. Don't dismiss that. The last one. All of you are negotiating on a daily basis, right? However, what we all want to have, especially chefs nowadays, we want farm-to-table experiences. Let's be very honest. Chefs can't really negotiate very well, but they can begin that conversation by talking to that supplier and then getting you on the table to have that conversation, whether you're locking in a contract for 6 months or a year, whatever it may be, it's really important to have those opportunities. And once that's locked in, as I was saying before about Hatem, then he has his partnership along with marketing opportunities. I just want you to take a look at this dish. Now, everybody thinks that cauliflower is a really boring vegetable. But here, we've basically I plated it up with 7 different types of textures. It became a signature dish. It literally cost us 0. It was all techniques. This dish is just called brassica because it's a celebration of all things brassica family. Very simple. You can do it at home, right? But just think about what you can do with really small, not expensive ingredients and just chat with the chef. What can we do? Now, the conclusion is chefs are key drivers when it comes to revenue. But we cannot do this without your help, without that collaboration. It's really important. Final thing before I go, the most important thing, chefs have been driving revenue through the experiences they had as children. All of those dishes have come through their grandmother's cooking, their mum's cooking, all of that sort of thing. That's why I was asking you at the beginning, what is your favorite childhood food memory? Because food is memories. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.